Hello and welcome to Heilman Haver, the Stage and Screen Podcast, episode 33, coming to you from Casa de Quinn and 1111 Studios in beautiful Port Orchard, Washington. I'm Matt Haver.
And I'm Greg Heilman. We're two local actors looking to hone our craft by exploring the best in local theater and on the big screen. Each week we bring you entertainment news and views, celebrate classic Hollywood, enjoy cocktails with a Tinseltown twist, interview talented local actors and directors, and chat with industry experts from LA to the UK.
Today is Friday, June 18th, and available now on our YouTube channel is our tribute to the Blues Brothers. We're back at the Bay Street Bistro, swapping trivia and mixing up orange whips in honor of cast member John Candy. Father's Day is this Sunday, so tune in, then make reservations for you and Dad for the Bistro's Sunday Supper, featuring Ribeye, and of course the Orange Whip. This Sunday, the 20th, celebrating this cult film that debuted 41 years ago on June 20th, 1980.
And speaking of cult classics, thanks to everyone who turned out for Lebowski Fest last weekend at the Roxy. It was an incredible turnout, and we had a fantastic time introducing the film and giving away some great prizes. Join us next Saturday, June 26th, for the next installment of Movies of the Decade. For the 1960s, it's The Graduate, starring Dustin Hoffman, Anne Bancroft, and Catherine Ross. We'll hit the stage at 6:30 p.m. to kick things off, and we'll be joined virtually, as always, by TCM author and film historian Jeremy Arnold to introduce the film.
And lots happening theater-wise around the area. Also on Saturday, June 26th, at Western Washington Center for the Arts in Port Orchard, auditions. That's right, auditions will be held for Gilbert and Sullivan's Pirates of Penzance. Call time is 12 noon at 521 Bay Street, Port Orchard. And at Bremerton Community Theater, it's Shout, the Mod Musical, playing now through June 27th. The show is directed by Ron Aton, and we hear there are over 180 groovy lighting cues handled with expertise by our friend and former guest Adrian DeGroot. So call 360-373-5152 or visit bctshows.com to get tickets and watch our page for Greg's review of Shout coming up next week.
Well, we said it before and I'll say it again. The local theater scene simply wouldn't be what it is without our guest, actor, director, and set builder extraordinaire Gary Fetterplace. Gary joined us last week and returns this episode to share more of his expertise on set construction and stories from behind the curtain.
Gary grew up and got his start in theater in England and attended the Italian Conti Stage School. His first professional stage appearance was at the London Palladium at the tender age of 11, with further appearances in London and on television. Gary first appeared in the U.S. in Jesus Christ Superstar at Bremerton Community Theater in 2004, and he has since appeared in nearly all the local theaters in over 75 productions either on stage or behind the scenes. Gary's also acted or been involved in nearly every Shakespeare production in the county since 2007. His first foray into producing and directing was in 2011, during the inauguration performances at BCT's RBS Hall.
Since then, he has added his extensive carpentry and design skills to the local theater scene, most frequently at Bremerton Community Theater, Bainbridge Performing Arts, and Western Washington Center for the Arts, assisting with set design and building, including the 5 staircases and wraparound balcony of BCT's Romeo and Juliet, which was awarded Best Set Design by the Kitsap Sun newspaper for the 2015-2016 season. He is the president of the Lesser Known Players and has served as trustee and treasurer for BCT since 2009. We were so pleased for Gary to join us last week for our first post-COVID in-person interview, and we hope you enjoy the second half of the conversation. Where do you normally get the direction for a set build or a set design? Does it come from the director?
It's mostly the director, yeah. So the director has to have some vision of what they want, and usually it's dictated normally by the entrances and exits. So that's the very first starting point. So when we were doing Boeing at BCT, so there's 7 doors, 7, so that straight away we know. Okay, so where are those going to be placed? Are we going to have some different levels? Directors always would like to have levels, so it's interesting for the audience. There's nothing worse than everything being on the same level. So that's normally where it starts from. The script is definitely dictating lots of things. Normally the entrances and exits.
So blocking would be done probably before the set design was finalized.
Oh yeah, and the set, so if I'm working with Christiane, for instance, she'll have a broad outline of what she wants, and then normally I go into the workshop to find, well, what have we got? Do we have 7 doors? So for Boeing, we didn't have 7 doors alike. So that was the first problem, and it's a modern apartment in Paris. And I said, I think we've got to bite the bullet and go out and buy brand new doors. Jeez. Thankfully, I'm the treasurer, right?
Well, that speaks to, I mean, in some situations, the set almost becomes a character in and of itself. You think of some of these caper type,
Definitely
clue
is.
type shows, and it sounds like this one, Boing Boing, is the same way. They become they're an integral part anyway, but it almost is a character in and of itself.
So, when we did the Mousetrap at BCT, and of course there's plenty of information on the internet, so what's the design going to be? It's going to be pretty straightforward because there's so many entrances and exits, and the script is definitely dictating where these doors are going to be because the actors make certain entries and, and you might be able to add something. So we had a little passageway around the back of one of our areas, which was kind of nice, So you do end up with these other little bits and pieces that go in, but the script is often dictating it. And of course you can't, so it's all very well once I've built it. Okay, so now someone's got to finish it. And that's when you really need a scenic artist to come in to actually do something, which is quite interesting with the Mousetrap. I said to Jeffrey, what we want is, traditional kind of Tudor panelling on the walls as if it's a manor house. Mm-hmm. And I said, I'll get all that stuff up, but we've got to get it stained. Are you going to be okay? You and your cast are going to get that stained for us? Yeah, no problem, Gary. I said, well, get some different stains first and try it so you can see what the different colours are, so you can make a good informed decision. I think he kind of forgot that, and we ended up with quite a deep brown.
I was going to say because I remember doing the staining, helping out with that when I was in a show, and I don't remember going through different stain samples.
No, I think he bought one and went with it because I was like, ah. When we saw it.
Woodwork seems to be, I mean, it's a prevalent theme in a lot of these classic plays, a lot of these period pieces. And one thing we did on Remember Go Back for Murder was there needed to be a wooden floor. It looked like wood paneling. And so it was literally like brown paint with some streaks of black in there. Yeah. And you rolled it on, and I helped a little bit with that. And it was very convincing. Yep. And you threw an area carpet over that, and it really, from 20, 30 feet, it passed.
And that's why you need somebody like Tina Henley Hicks.
Oh, man, she's a magician.
That can do the scenic artistry. And, Romeo and Juliet would not have looked like it did look if it wasn't for somebody like her.
The backdrop in Appointment with Death.
Yep.
I mean, what an incredible desert scene. Yeah.
And we were scheduled to have Tina on the show, and then COVID hit.
Yep.
So we will definitely get her on
She's
to
next
talk
on
about
the list,
her.
for our local spotlights, for sure. So, as a theater fan and an actor yourself and a director, what set design have you seen either local, community theater or professionally, Fifth Ave, Paramount, wherever you've been, Broadway, that's most impressed you or inspired you, and maybe you've taken things from to design your own?
Every set I look at and it kind of inspires me, to be quite honest, and unless I've picked dreadful holes in it. But, you do see some incredible things over in Seattle every time you go there, one particular show at the main playhouse there. When we only fell into, we were actually in the theatre next door watching some Shakespeare, and then we came out and we found this other show that was on. We said, we should come back on Monday and watch that show. And we did, and we went in there, and they had a full interior house, 2-story house on the stage. Wow. And it looked fantastic, with this balcony as well that they crossed. And the staircase went up, and then they crossed on this balcony to the master bedroom. And it was something out of a Hollywood house, this set that they'd built, and you could just see the detail and the height and breadth of this thing was the amount of man hours, incredible. When you think downstairs at WWCA at the set down there for the Box and Cox, just a wall and 3 doors.
Right.
You think, well, that's a very simple set. Still, that was about 40 man hours to actually get that up, because behind it you've got 2 black screen walls too, to when those doors open, that you don't see anything behind it, So there's more than just the basic thing that what you see in front of you.
I was going to get your take on that, because you mentioned a set that's really detailed and complicated, and on the other hand, I've seen some shows that are, on the other end of the spectrum, really simple. Newsies, for example, is really scaffolding that rotates around the stage, used for different purposes. Come From Away is really a set of chairs to represent the airplane. There's no airplane, motif or anything like that. Is simple good in some cases when it's done right? What's your take on that simple versus complex?
Yeah. For the right place, simple is definitely the way to go. If we're doing things up at Bainbridge at the lesser known players, the Rolling Bay Hall there is so tiny. There's not much you can do in there. So it's got to be simple. It is a semi-black box production, basically. So you just have a few significant pieces that come on that you use. And I can see the benefit from either. If you're doing a main stage production, most of the clientele, our old season ticket holders at BCT, they love to come and see a set. We did one down there for a show called Black Comedy, a show of about when the power goes out, i.e. it's dark. So what we decided to do was, and that was with Tina Hennig Hicks, we actually did a whole drop and we painted the frontage of the house on that drop, and that's what the audience saw when they were sitting in the audience before basically the curtain went up, and the curtain was the front of the house. And then once that front of the house went up, then you saw the interior of that house.
Oh, cool.
So the front door, so the physical door now was actually on the stage, where previously it was on the actual painting that she did on the front.
Wow.
And then it went up, and then you had this, so when you're doing a main stage production like that, the audience are expecting not to see, just a couple of boxes and so forth. They are expecting to see something more inspiring.
Most of the local theaters, they're not huge houses. Is there anything you have to think about as a set designer or builder as far as perspective goes? Is it mostly just keeping things simple enough to be visible and identifiable all the way in the back kind of a thing? We talked to Tommy Kurzman, and he is a makeup and prosthetics guy. He does hair, wigs, design. And he said that, when you have a large theater, you have to make sure things don't look like a helmet. It's got to look like hair still from a distance, through the opera glasses kind of a thing. He's probably talking about, seats of 10,000 at a time. But are there any things like that you have to think about?
Yeah, you do. And, certainly down at BCT, we end up sitting in the auditorium in all the different seats to find out what are we looking at. Can I see that far corner? Mm-hmm. Can I see the wings? The wings are always a big issue. When we were doing that Black Comedy set, it was one of the first ones I did in 2012, another 2-story set. And we got it up, and it was in the wrong position. And we had to move it 2 feet to stage right. But we built the thing, and now we had to move it. And we moved it inch by inch, 4 of us. Inch, but it had to be moved 2 feet. And it was a big 2-story thing that was, so yeah.
Wow.
At BCT, it's such a big, broad stage. You've got to make sure you're looking and seeing what the audience see. Can I see, from the front row, do I see the lighting rigs, in the rigging system? No, I don't, because the blacks are in the correct place. Now, if I go to the back, is the black now actually covering something else that somebody else can't see or could see or should have?
Am I looking up
seeing?
Quasimodo's cloak from here, kind of a thing? Yeah.
So it does get, you've got to be looking. WWCA is a very similar issue because it's such a broad, long expanse. So when we did the Crucible last year, we decided to actually shrink it back into the middle more because we needed to. We couldn't use that stage left. So those poor little people sitting in those seats down there wasn't going to be a good view for them personally, So that was going to be a bit of a problem. But we did move everything to the centre. On purpose, because everything happened. It's not an action play.
Right.
There's no singing or dancing in the Crucible. Everything is all words and all talking, and it's normally one-on-one. Therefore, it had to happen in the centre. We rebuilt the auditorium for that particular show,
right?
And gave some height to a couple of the rows and some extra leg room for the other audience members. So for those poor 6 people down in house right, but everybody else had definitely a great view and good leg room.
So I guess that would also speak to the importance of, I would say, show selection, depending on the stage that you have to work with, the space you have to work with. But, you think of something like Glengarry Glen Ross. Like Greg and I would love to produce one day.
Right.
Very simple set.
Yep.
A couple of booths, couple of chairs, couple of office phones.
Yep.
You got it. It's perfectly suited for a small space.
And then you think of some of these large musicals. Can you pull it off? How much reality will you have to suspend?
And I think that's when you have to get creative, right?
I guess so.
And we did that at the Jewel Box. Christiane was directing one of her shows there, and she said, "Gary, can you come up and do the set?" Yeah, sure thing. So we basically got 3 different scenes, and we can't change the scenery at the Jewel Box. I'm thinking, can we get it all on stage in one go, all 3 different rooms? And that's what we did. We got all 3 rooms in their little black box, and that's how the show goes anyway, So and it moves from room to room, and then it goes back, and so that's what. And the actors would actually stay on set, and the lights would just go out in their particular area, and the lights would come up in the other area, and the other actors would start acting in that particular area. They didn't often actually move from room to room. I think it was only the dad that actually did that at one particular time. So he had to go backstage and then come out into the other room, and so that's how we did it. That was a very interesting construction for sure.
Exercise, yeah.
Yeah, so if you were, and the Jewel Box is a weird little place anyway. So if you were way over on house left there, when the action was going over on stage left, that was completely opposite, and you had to look past the other 2 little set areas to see that area, So and the same for the other direction. But if you're in the front section, the good seats, as it were, you're okay. If you got there early enough, you were in the good seats.
Yeah, exactly.
So we talked about budget. We talked about, I guess, theater size, some physical things. So those are constraints that you have to work in. You only have so much money. You've got a set canvas that you have to work on that's not really going to change. What other constraints are there when it comes to set design or set building that you have to try to overcome when you're working on a show?
Yeah, I mean, when we did the Scottish play, we had a particular vision of kind of an abstract set, and then we actually got on stage, and we tried to then, create that vision. It was completely useless, and it was thrown in the bin. It didn't match the space, which was, just peculiar, and it just wouldn't have worked. And we actually had to go back to some traditional set building, as it were, although pushed way back into the wings. Again, remember I was talking about the wing spaces. So we did actually, we actually worked in the wings for that particular production. So that was very interesting to see how we managed to get that, because it's, there's no change in the set, especially being Shakespeare, so that, the whole stage just changes in light, really. And you kind of ignore the castle if you don't need to think about the castle that's in the background. But then when the castle's being used, either as interior or exterior, then it's fine, But that was very interesting to see how that was actually going to work.
Don't try to match the vision to a specific, like I mentioned, canvas, a physical area. I imagine is really where a lot of the creativity comes in from the design and build perspective, outside of the finishing work that we talked about before, because it's I have to imagine that's probably the biggest challenge.
Yeah, for sure. The Blowdale Reserve, doing the Shakespeare up there, and I've done that the last 6 years, and we had a new technical director at the theatre, and it was his turn to design the set and the show that we were doing, and he hadn't taken into consideration the slope of the ground, and he hadn't actually measured it. So we built these things in the workshop, and then we took them to site, and they didn't fit.
Oh, no.
And he said, well, I knew it was, 1 or 2 inches. I didn't know it was 4 inches. Oh. He hadn't actually measured the slope. And that's an outdoor theatre deal that, But, thankfully, he was a builder carpenter, and he's got me there as well, and we can get around this and we can do this. And one of the funny things was Juliet's the coffin that she lies on at the end, and we'd made it to the specifications that he'd asked, and it didn't work at all with the slope of the field. But lo and behold, turn it around the other way, it was perfect. So yeah, you can't.
You want Juliet sliding off into the first row. That would not work out well.
Because I was just like, I've got to rebuild that thing. It took about 4 hours to cut and make this thing, to the dimensions that you actually particularly had, because it's got to be carried on, carried off. It's got to be a certain weight. It's got to be a certain strength, and everything. And I was like, oh my God, I've got to rebuild that. We open on Friday. It's Monday. We're not going to squeeze this extra 4 hours somewhere to build another thing. Let's try turning it around. Turned it around. It was perfect.
You mentioned a coffin. I completely didn't even think about some of the crazy stuff that you've probably had to build for some of these shows.
Yeah.
Can you think of the craziest thing?
And that was BPA as well, on Peter and Starcatcher, and they said, well, we've got this swing set that needs to be, because this part of the show, it looks like it's supposed to be like a playground. Okay, fair enough. What's the scenic artist got there? Well, he's got a nice big swing, a big A-frame thing. Okay, well, how do we get that on and off? And, and now it's got to be safe to actually use. Can we bolt it to the stage? Can we, can we do this? Wow. Can we do that? And get it to work and to be safe for the poor girl that's got to swing on the blessed thing. Because somebody's designed it and somebody upstairs has agreed, oh, that looks beautiful, we've got to have that,
There's always somebody upstairs.
There's somebody upstairs.
Well, what a difference between something that's just aesthetic and something that has to be functional.
Right.
Well, that was, again, BPA when we did Chitty Chitty Bang Bang. And we were very, very lucky that they'd done the show in Puyallup a few years before. And somebody in their organisation at their theatre group actually built a full-size replica car, 14 feet long.
Wow.
The full-size real deal. And he rewired it and everything, and we drove it onto the stage at BPA and turned it round on the stage in the show and everything. It was awesome. An incredible thing. But, so where do we store it? We have it on the stage.
14 feet of it.
And one of the problems there at BPA was they didn't have a bandstand, a place to put the band. The band always used to sit amongst the sets, normally behind the back proscenium section. I say proscenium is the wrong word, but at the back, they're normally hidden, and that's where they'd be. So we finally decided that we needed to build a bandstand up in the back far corner of that particular theatre to put the band on, and then we actually parked the car underneath.
Again, creativity.
Wow. Yeah. Well, the thing that I love about theater is that, you're sitting right there. You do have to suspend some reality. Audiences are ready to. So like you're saying you got to drop these lights and bring these up, and you got to look across these scene pieces and all those types of things. The theater audience is ready to do that. So that's got to make things nice, as opposed to maybe for film and TV, which is much more exacting. People are going to call you on specific things.
Indeed, and the current one acts for WWCA, in fact, the opening speech by the first actor, he actually tells a little story of how this particular play and the building of the set. Right. And they tried to get these certain things and they couldn't get them. So now they've got to rely on whatever the theatre carpenter can do for them, which was basically not a lot. And he asks the audience to bring their imagination to their aid.
Envision a train car,
Indeed.
For Express, yeah. We won't give it away, but the person who plays that role might be in this room.
Where is he?
Quite humorous.
Some English bloke.
Yeah, exactly, yeah.
Well, he does come well qualified.
But exactly. It's a joke in that show, in Express,
is.
but say you have to do Murder on the Orient Express. How do you make a train car, in 40 or 50 feet?
That is one of our next projects.
Is it?
Because it is a play that is available now, and I will be putting it forward for BCT, and it's kind of an interesting set.
Oh, let us know. We love Agatha Christie.
Yeah.
Now, here's a quick question. Right before quarantine, WFCA was ready to run Little Shop of Horrors.
Right.
The monster. Would that be something that would be the set builder's responsibility to say you don't have one, like we were able to do, is borrow one, rent one from someone up on Bainbridge? Would that be a set designer's responsibility to build like a puppet like that? Or
it can be. It depends on the show and the director and producer. So at BCT, for instance, that's one of the questions. What are the limitations? What are the problems with doing this show? And if that show was put forward, it would be, the puppetry. Where's it going to come from? Who's going to make it? How does that come about? Do you have a specialised person that's going to do all that for you? And we tend also at Bremerton to also say, okay, so you're the director and you want to put on this show. So who's your team of people that are going to come with you to do all those jobs that need to be done? And so, for instance, when we did the Black Comedy show, Dan Eastis was the director for that. And I said to him, Dan, I'll be your producer. I'll take care of everything. You can just concentrate on just the directing and the actors. I'm going to do the set. I'm going to do the props. I'm going to do the costumes for you. Don't you worry. And if I can't do them, I'll get someone. You don't need to worry about it. So the team was Dan and Gary. And there was the Dan and Gary show. Oh, and Tina. Tina did the painting because she's the best painter in town, right?
Yeah, big time.
Have you ever had to outsource something that you weren't able to do? I know with volunteer, regional, local theater, try to do everything, by volunteer and within as little budget as possible. But have you ever had to outsource something?
Yeah, you've always got to outsource something. Yeah, at some point in time, again at BPA, they were asking me to do certain things. I said, I'm not a welder. I can't weld. This is a welding job. We need to find a volunteer to be able to do that. And then thankfully they've been around long enough and they looked through their books and they found somebody and he came in and welded these parts together to actually create what needed to be done, So that was very handy. But you normally have to... you've got to... you can't just say I'm going to put on a show. There's a lot of pre-thought of the pros and cons of, So, for instance, Singing in the Rain, a show dear to my heart for the tap dancing.
Sure.
The big issue was, are we going to make it rain on stage? Mm-hmm. So I did actually come up with a design for Bremerton to make it rain on stage.
No kidding.
And thankfully, the rain happens right before the interval. Between the
the towels out.
So we can mop up the excess during the intermission, and if it's half an hour, well, it's going to be a long intermission.
Picture those kids at the basketball games with the big mops cleaning up the sweat when somebody falls in the court.
But so that particular show, so how do we get around that? Who's going to design that? Who's going to plumb that? Who's going to, how's that going to happen? And if you need to have somebody that can do that.
Yeah, and it gives an opportunity to bring the community into the community theater.
Yeah, exactly. And if people are listening who have those skills, welding,
absolutely.
If they want to get involved, what's the best way for them to do that?
Yeah, generally, at Bremerton, there's a volunteer coordinator. So you normally turn up and say hello to that person, and they take your details, and then they pass your details on to the next show, and or people that are putting on shows that particular season.
Awesome. Well, if you're out there listening, you have a special skill set. Now's the time as we rebuild and come out the opposite end of the tunnel from COVID. This is case in point right here. We're live. It feels great.
It does.
Yeah. And Gary, thanks so much for joining us.
And we're all vaccinated, so it's great.
I know. It feels good. I'm glad we're on this end of things, right? And the audio quality will be so much better for everybody, I think.
Yeah, Zoom's been great because it's given us the ability to do something when otherwise we wouldn't be able to. But there's nothing like getting together with people, talking about things you love, and just, sharing a drink.
Absolutely. Might have to make another. Gary's Pink Thingy.
Yeah.
And cheers. Thank you for joining us.
Cheers.
All right. We learned a lot.
Thank you.
All right.
Bye for now.
Thanks again to our guest, Gary Fetterplace. You can see Gary's handiwork everywhere in Kitsap and most easily by visiting bctshow.com and lesserknownplayers.org.
Join us next week for our conversation with former entertainment writer at the Los Angeles Times, specializing in classic Hollywood stories, Susan King.
And if you enjoy the show, make sure to follow us and share the podcast with a friend. You can find us on Apple Podcasts, YouTube, Amazon Audible, iHeartRadio, Spotify, and Pandora.
We'd love to hear from you, so please join the conversation on Facebook and Twitter and email us with thoughts and comments at heilmanandhaver@gmail.com. And as always, thank you for supporting local theater and for joining us here on Heilman and Haver.